Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson, and welcome to this episode of Books That Make You Better. Today, we're going to be looking at Patrick Lencioni's The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, an excellent book that really looks at, what are the requirements to have a successful team. And I think when people write books, they know if they kind of show some negative things, it's probably more attractive to readers. You could just as easily flip this around and say the five functions of a successful team. But it's kind of more interesting when it's kind of phrased the five dysfunctions. You're wondering what's wrong with this team, what's up with this team, what's going on. And it makes it interesting from a reader's perspective. So Lencioni does this as a fable. So if you've ever read The Goal by Elijah Goldratt, you would know he wrote it like a fable, and it was a very good book because it was interesting and it had a story and it was very applied, and you could see how it would actually work in the real world. So keeping with that sort of tradition, like The Goal, Lencioni wrote the five dysfunctions of a team that way. And I often wondered why this book is so recommended in the world of lean. Those of you that know me know that I've spent a lot of time in the realms of lean construction methodologies and lean manufacturing. And it's a very highly recommended book in those areas. Well, of course, those areas require very high functioning, collaborative, engaged teams. And so it's good to understand why teams don't function that well, so we can learn from that and figure out, well, how can we make them function better and avoid these five dysfunctions. And some of the five dysfunctions are actually kind of surprising because you probably wouldn't list that as something that you would necessarily want in a high performing team, right? Like that you would want to flip around for a high performing team. But we'll talk about that. So he really does demonstrate how leadership matters in this role. In the fable, basically a leader comes in and the team that she inherits is not very cooperative, and they're kind of not meeting their numbers, and the company is falling behind, and it's kind of a startup company, and it's not meeting its expectations, and there's concerns about it, and the investors are concerned about it. And so she has quite a history of turning around companies and getting them on track. So as CEO, she comes in and she does start changing things and challenging a lot of preconceived ideas that the team thought that they were functioning well. So I find that a very interesting story. And, they have people that there's one person that she's not going to actually fit the team long term and doesn't work out for a variety of reasons. So it kind of puts it in a proper framework, but it also does it in a respectful way. Again, I'm pulling on some of the lean aspects of respect for people. So I really like the way he kind of brought that into it. So it shows some of those qualities, and where somebody really doesn't fit, maybe they can be kind of talked into leaving in a way, and it kind of works out that way. And of course, a big emphasis on the importance of collaboration and healthy conflict. So we'll get into that. So he kind of talks about that in the fable. Now, what's nice is the fables, it's not very, like the book itself, I think is just over 200 pages, and the fable probably takes up about 2/3 of that. And then Lencioni gets into, well, okay, after the fable's done and they've really applied these five, then it talks about them individually and gives you tips on how you can apply it with your team. So if you're a manager of any groups or teams, this is very helpful, because then at the end, after you've kind of seen how the fable works, you can start thinking about, well, how would I do this on my own team? And it gets into it a lot. And I found that very helpful. So probably the first 120 pages are probably on the fable, and then maybe the last 70 pages or 80 pages are on the five dysfunctions. And these are the five dysfunctions. And so let's take a look at what they are and a short little overview of each one. So absence of trust. Well, if you don't have trust, and he uses that as the foundation. So you really have to work at that to build that. And then part of that is getting to know a little bit about people's backgrounds. Give some tips here about, trying, if you've got your own team, that you should do some ice breaking activities with them that sort of lets them tell you, what's the best job they ever had, what's the worst job they ever had, and just getting a better understanding. Because if you understand a little bit about people's backgrounds, it maybe gives you some clues into why they behave the way they do, and that makes it easier to interact with them. So team members need to be comfortable being vulnerable with one another, meaning you've got to trust each other. He kind of goes through that in the Fable, that teams that don't have trust, they won't speak up, and they'll be quiet, and they don't want to interact so much, because if they say something, they're fearful it's going to be used against them. So that becomes an issue. And 1 and 2 kind of go together with that, dysfunction 1 and 2. So we've got weaknesses, skill deficiencies, interpersonal shortcomings, mistakes, requests for help. All right. So they need to be comfortable being vulnerable with each other with regards to these areas. And yeah, everybody has weaknesses. And if your team doesn't know where they are, then they can't necessarily help. And you might get assigned stuff that really somebody else could do better. Mistakes, well, also, you got to be comfortable saying you made a mistake, because how can we ever learn if we aren't willing to admit our mistakes? And how can the rest of the team learn as well? And being not afraid to ask for help, very important. So all of those you could flip around. Like I said, you could flip around the title of the book and say the 5 functions of a highly successful team. Usually with these dysfunctions, you can flip them around, abundance of trust instead of absence of trust. That's the way I look at it. And so if you understand that, then you can start saying, well, what are some of the things that I'm doing in my team that'll help? And I think Lencioni does an excellent job of that. And, I can see from a construction management point of view, being a professor of construction management, that's very important. Otherwise, you can have catastrophic things happen on construction sites when people aren't willing to admit that they made a mistake, aren't requesting for help when they don't know something. Number 2 is interesting, fear of conflict. So in the Fable in the book, the team doesn't challenge each other. Like, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want, if it's somebody's area, they don't want to in a meeting say, oh, but maybe we should think about this, because then that's that person's territory, and now you're interfering with their territory, and they're going to be upset with you, and it's going to have a comeback, so to speak. So fear of conflict is he's really concerned that you want to have conflict. Fear of conflict usually leads to boring meetings because nobody says anything, right? It's like people nod their heads. And then they don't say it in the meeting, but after the meeting, there's lots of gossip. So a place filled with politics and gossip usually has a fear of conflict because it's all in the backwaters or in the backwoods, so to speak. They'll stay away from controversial topics, even if they're important. And that leads to a lot of people. There's a Gallup poll that was done, and very low engagement in companies of people, much lower than you would ever suspect. And so this leads to a lot of disengaged people when you have a fear of conflict. Time wasted with avoidance of issue and protection of status, right? So everybody's worried about, their reputation, and they don't want to be proven wrong. They don't want to get into conflicts with different people. Now, with that said, it's not about making it personal conflict. It's about the business. It's about the project. It's about the problem. It's not about the individual. I think about when I teach negotiations, you don't want to make it about the person. You want to make it about the problem. And if you have conflict about the problem, and it's healthy conflict, and you come to a resolution afterwards, at least you've vetted some of the other potential pathways. At least you've identified some of the risks. If you have fear of conflict, you don't do that. And so then those risks become preeminent and problematic, and they actually start happening at the detriment to the team and the company. So number 3, lack of commitment. So a team that fails to commit can't make up their minds. There's indecision going on. They create ambiguity. There's no clarity on things. They're missing windows of opportunities. There's that opportunity bus that goes by, and you got to be ready to jump on it and be ready for it. So if people take too long to make a decision within a team, because maybe you're worried about ruffling feathers, maybe it's for a lot of reasons, then that breeds a lack of confidence and a fear of failure. Lencioni, this book was written a while back, so he doesn't get into, how fast the world is changing and things of that nature. But definitely today, in today's environment, with the rate of change increasing ever exponentially, it becomes all that more important to be able to commit to decisions and get the team as a team to commit to the decision, right? If you vetted it, you've had your conflict, and then most of the team is saying, there's a majority, we've made this decision to go in this direction, then that's the decision. You're committing with the rest of the team to go in that, even though that might not have been your early decision or way that you wanted to go, right? So you don't want to be going back. Sometimes we waste so much time going back over and over decisions that we would have been better to have made even the wrong decision and learned from that and moved on than all the time we wasted going back and forth. So that's really well explained with the Fable. Avoidance of accountability. I think I got the letter crossed off over there. But avoidance of accountability refers to the ability and willingness to call out their peers on performance and behaviors. So this really means that, if somebody commits to something, but then they're not doing it, they're going to be called out, right? And people don't like that. Peer pressure can be a positive attribute when it's done in the right way. Not that it's done as a punitive against a certain individual, but it is saying that you're accountable for your actions that you've committed to, and the rest of the team is dependent on it. So that's important. If we're afraid to have accountability, then people will say, yeah, I commit to this, yeah, I'm all in, and then not do anything, and then not worry about any repercussions. So you find in lean construction methodology, referring back to that, in construction, last planner system is a system that really brings in accountability. You do post-it notes for projects. People commit to time frames, and then when they don't make it, they justify the reasons why, or they learn from it, or there's an acceptance that there was something preventing them because they don't want to come out and say they didn't do something they committed to. They get it done, or they have a very good reason why it couldn't be done. So this is getting to, if you have an avoidance of accountability, you're going to have a lot of mediocrity. You're going to miss deadlines. And that places undue burden on other team members, the team leader. This way, the team leader is not the sole source of discipline. The team helps with peer pressure. That's why I know that this book is so well received in the lean community, because that's how we like to do our projects, with last planner system and collaboration and engagement. And there is definitely peer pressure in that process. And of course, as I said, you can flip these around, and then you've got them that you have an abundance of accountability, if you will, or you have accountability present. Dysfunction number 5 is inattention to results, right? So a team that is not focused on results stagnates and fails to grow, rarely defeats competitors, loses achievement oriented. They're not achievement oriented, right? They lose that. Encourages team members to focus on their own careers and individual goals, puts themselves ahead of the team. If you're not paying attention to how well the team is doing, is easily distracted. So we're not really in it to win it. We're not really looking at the results. Now, the book was kind of careful to say that it's not about how you necessarily do against all your competitors, although that was a big part of the Fable. It was talking about the competitors, but it definitely is, even if you're doing your best, but you're never getting results, or you're not paying attention to the results, that's not good. You've got to learn from your results, and then you've got to learn what you've got to do better. And getting the right results, the right benchmarks that you're measuring is also important. You want to be looking at results that you can influence and control, not at results that you have no influence or control over. So that's important. And they talked about how the team would reach certain goal decisions. What are they trying to achieve this year? And it'd be very minimal targets, but each one would then resonate into the various leaders' roles and make sure that they're all working towards a concerted end game or end goal in that process. And so the 5 dysfunctions of a team and the inattention to results, that was a nice way to cap it off, I think, and to ensure that you have a focus with the team and the team knows where they're trying to go and what they're trying to achieve. That's always a good thing, because otherwise people then just start focusing on their own careers, their own goals, and they don't really care about the team. But actually, if you're focused in on certain goals as a team, you learn a lot in the process. You meet with success. You know how to reach success. And guess what? You actually did do yourself a lot of favors individually for that process, because you're successful at what you do. And if you're successful at what you do, you'll be in high demand for promotions and other potential. So I really like the book for those reasons, and I would highly recommend it from that perspective. So yeah, I would give it 9 out of 10 on this particular book for those reasons. So I'm Tom Stephenson from this edition of Books That Make You Better. If you enjoyed this, please click subscribe, check out my channel, check out the playlists. I've got more on the books that make you better, as well as a lot on construction management processes, project management processes, Microsoft project, business management, and those particular areas. So I'm Tom Stephenson, wishing you a wonderful day. Leave a comment, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.